What's up everybody, it's me Zombie. Today I'm going to be going over some of the basic techniques that I use to construct my Mass Effect Andromeda armor. I'm working on a Sara Ryder cosplay from the new Mass Effect game coming out, so of course I'm going to have to make some paper patterns. I make patterns as simply as I possibly can. I usually just fold a thick piece of drafting paper in half and sketch out a rough pattern. Tracing one side of the pattern over a folded piece of paper means after I cut out my pattern and unfold it, I have a symmetrical piece that's ready to be transferred onto foam. I usually use a marker or a pen and transfer my pattern onto EVA foam. In this case, I'm using 1/2 inch EVA foam for some of my main armor pieces. After I cut out my foam with the utility knife, I can cut in extra details that I need on the outside of the foam. I do that by sketching out the details that I need on the foam piece itself and then going over it with a smaller blade or a rotary tool to really bring out those details. For the front of my chest piece, to make it a little bit smoother, I decided to contact cement some 2mm foam on top of my 1/2 inch foam to really help round out the edges and make it look a lot smoother. I just added contact cement around the edges and on the 2mm foam and stuck everything together. To press the 2mm foam into all of my detailed creases, I'm just using the blunt end of a paintbrush to really push in the glue and make sure all that contact cement sticks to each other. And ta-da! There's the front of my chest piece. On the back side of the chest piece, I'm doing the exact same thing by drawing some details on one side of the chest piece. Using a Sharpie marker on foam means that the marker is going to come off easily. I'm using this to my advantage here by creating a pattern out of one of the details that I already sketched out. I pressed a piece of drafting paper right over the Sharpie, and it gave me a little pattern that I can cut out and transfer to the other side to ensure that it's exactly symmetrical. And again, I'm using that same 2mm foam technique on top of the 1/2 inch EVA foam to round out all of my edges and make it look like it's all one cohesive piece. I was very generous with my contact cement here, and I'm using the same end of that paintbrush to press in all of those details. Now to add all of my other little details on top of this. I'm using the same technique to transfer my pattern onto some pattern paper and to put it on the other side of the strap just to make sure that everything is even. When I was initially looking at reference pictures for my Sara Ryder cosplay, I thought that these little indentions here on the chest were actually kind of popping out and protruding. So I put 2 dowel pieces right in the middle right there to give it that effect. But when the official BioWare character kit came out, I was able to see that these pieces weren't popping out, they were actually indented, so I ended up having to remove them later. I contact cemented the straps onto the main parts of my chest piece and then reinforced them with some other pieces of foam, hot glue, and contact cement. After adding some of my details, this chest piece is pretty much all constructed. I used the same patterning, foam cutting, and contact cementing technique on the shoulders and on the forearm. On the forearm, I actually just made this out of foam and then wrapped the whole thing in stretch vinyl. The forearms actually looked like they were made out of some kind of like really hard, squishy space vinyl. So to replicate that, I actually just made these forearms out of foam and then wrapped my 5mm foam with some stretch vinyl. In my case, I used dark blue for the Mass Effect Andromeda colors, but you can always mix and match to make your own. I used Super 77 spray to adhere the vinyl onto the foam, and then I used hot glue to reinforce all the edges so everything stayed in place. For the boots, I recycled some old work boots that I wasn't wearing anymore by cutting off the top half of them. You could always buy boots of your own, but I just happened to have these in my garage that were just begging to be used for a cosplay, so I just reused them. After the tops were cut off, I made sure that they fit on my foot and adjusted the laces and some of the boot to make sure that I was able to slip them on and off with ease. After everything was adjusted, I glued in the laces and some of the other zippers that were attached to the boot and then started adding some foam details. I used contact cement to put some of the main layers of 2mm foam onto the boot. And after a few layers of foam, they're really starting to look more like cool space guy boots and less like recycled old work boots. Some of the final steps to make sure that everything looks smooth and nice is to use my rotary tool and go over some of the edges. I'm just making sure that all the details look round and nice. I'm using different heads for my rotary tool. Here I'm using a cone sanding one, but for the smaller details I'll also use a much smaller one so I can get into all those little crevices. After all of my edges are all rounded out, it's time to plastidip. For those of you who aren't familiar with plastidip, I use plastidip as a primer for my foam projects that I work on. Plastidip kind of bends with your foam piece, and it's great to use just so you don't have to worry about your paint flaking off later. I'm starting to put my first coats of plastidip on all of the pieces that I've constructed so far. And next up is gonna be to paint everything. After plastidipping, I'm hitting everything with a white spray gloss enamel to give it a nice shiny finish before I start weathering everything. You can really tell that these parts are starting to come together once they're all one color and they're not weird foam colors, if that makes sense. I'm really happy with how everything is coming together so far. Please let me know if you have a question. I will be happy to answer it right down in the comments. And if you love cosplay content and you love making stuff, this is the channel for you. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next video. If you guys want to see me work on cosplay in real time, come hang out with me in my shop. I have a Twitch channel, so go give it a follow. I stream several times a week and I can't wait to see you guys there too. Thank you guys, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.